That's the unsettling question we're grappling with today. What happens when a community built on generations of Black homeownership is suddenly at risk of being priced out? We're talking about Altadena, California, after the devastating Eaton Fire. And this wasn't just another suburb of LA. This was a haven, a symbol of resilience achievement with a Black homeownership rate more than double the national average. And to understand the depth of this tragedy, we need to look at the history, the personal stories, the very real fear that Altadena's unique character could be lost forever. So make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to support this deep dive. We're going to uncover a really important story here.
It is a complex situation. There's no doubt about that.
Exactly. And understanding the history is crucial to understanding the impact of this fire. During the Civil Rights era, when redlining was rampant, Altadena was one of the few places in LA where Black families could actually buy homes. They built a vibrant community, a legacy passed down through generations. And now so much of that is in ashes. We've been digging into firsthand accounts, and the story of Dennis "Buzz" Chapman really struck me. He's a film and TV producer who bought his home in 2020 and found the original 1950 title deed restricted residency to whites except for servants.
Wow. A chilling reminder of how recent these discriminatory practices were.
Right. For Chapman, owning that home was a powerful statement, a symbol of progress. And now it's gone, along with countless other homes filled with memories and dreams. And it's not just the physical structures, it's the community spaces, the places where people gathered, celebrated, and supported each other, the Pasadena Jewish Temple, the Altadena Community Church, the Masjid Al-Taqwa Mosque, all gone.
The loss of those spaces is significant. They really do represent the diversity and the shared experience of Altadena.
Yeah, and this is where the fear of displacement comes in. When a disaster like this hits, it can create an opening for what's called disaster gentrification. Basically, property values increase rapidly, attracting wealthy developers and pushing out longtime residents who can no longer afford to live there. Think about what Raphael Augustin said. He lost his home in the fire, and he's worried that private equity is going to come in and recreate this town into a for-profit rental property disaster that no one wants. That fear is very real for many residents in Altadena.
Rebuilding after a disaster like this is always complex. This adds another layer of urgency to the conversation.
Absolutely. And for folks like Courtney Lotfie Portindal, it's not just a hypothetical fear. She and her partner are artists who moved to Altadena last year, found a community they loved, and now they've lost everything. Their artwork, their mementos, everything. And now on top of that loss, she's worried about being priced out of the community. She's just starting to call home. The rental market was already tight, and after a disaster like this, prices tend to skyrocket. So the question becomes, can a community built on generations of home ownership survive when it's suddenly at risk of being priced out? It's a question that we'll be exploring in more detail as we continue this deep dive.
It's a crucial question for sure.
If this story is resonating with you, hit that like button and share it to help spread the word. We need to keep this conversation going.
Awareness is definitely the first step towards understanding and action.
And speaking of action, we need to look at the personal stories of resilience that are emerging from the ashes. We read about Adonis Jones, a retired coach who lived in Altadena for nearly 20 years, who lost everything. His daughter Rochelle is terrified of Black Altadena disappearing altogether.
That fear is understandable given the history of displacement that many Black communities have faced.
And what makes Jones's story even more heartbreaking is that he got 2 reports that his house was safe only for it to be destroyed later. It's like a cruel twist of fate. But even in the face of such loss, there's a spirit of determination to rebuild. Like Muhammad Akhtar, who owns the Easy Halal Meat and Market in Altadena. His business was spared, but he used to pray at the mosque that burned down. He keeps saying, all we can do is rebuild. It's that kind of resilience that gives me hope for Altadena's future. And it's not just individual stories. We have to talk about the impact on Altadena's vibrant art scene. This fire took out so much more than just houses. This place was a haven for artists, a hub of creativity, and now so much of that is gone. We read about the Zorthian Ranch, this legendary art space that had been around since 1946. Andy Warhol, Bob Dylan, they all spent time there. It's mostly rubble now.
That's a loss that ripples far beyond the immediate community. It's a cultural loss as well.
And then there's the Bunny Museum, a place that held the Guinness World Record for the largest bunny collection. Even the quirky, whimsical parts of Altadena are gone. But it's the personal stories of artists like Salomon Huerta that really hit home. He lost irreplaceable artwork, his own creations, pieces from other artists, all gone.
The financial and emotional impact on artists is immeasurable in a situation like this.
It's a reminder that this fire destroyed so much more than just physical structures. It destroyed a way of life. And for artists, so much of their work is tied to their space, to their community, to their inspiration. So how do you even begin to rebuild when the very foundation of your creative life has been ripped away? So we've been talking about the devastating losses in Altadena, homes, history, and that unique community spirit. And now we're facing the complex question of rebuilding. How do you even begin to piece together a community when so much has been shattered?
It's a process that happens on multiple levels, right? There's the immediate need for shelter, food, and medical care. But then there's the long-term vision, the question of what Altadena will become.
And that's where things get really tricky. Because rebuilding isn't just about putting up new buildings. It's about rebuilding lives, rebuilding dreams, and making sure that the new Altadena reflects the spirit of the old one. We read about Joelle Fortune Simmons, whose husband's family home burned down after 47 years. She's determined to rebuild in Altadena, but right now she's just trying to figure out where to live, how to put her life back together. It's a reality so many residents are facing.
It's a time of immense vulnerability for sure, and it's crucial that support systems are in place to help people navigate this period of transition.
Absolutely. But there's also this underlying fear that the Altadena that they rebuild might not be the Altadena they knew and loved. That fear of developers swooping in, buying up land, and building luxury condos where family homes once stood.
That concern is valid. We've seen it happen in other communities that have faced similar disasters.
It's that whole disaster gentrification thing we were talking about earlier. That sudden influx of capital, while necessary for rebuilding, can also lead to displacement. If you're just joining us, make sure you hit that subscribe button and check out the first part of this deep dive to hear more about disaster gentrification and how it threatens communities like Altadena.
It highlights the need for proactive policies that protect longtime residents and ensure that rebuilding benefits the existing community.
And that's what folks in Altadena are fighting for. They're organizing, speaking out, and demanding a seat at the table when it comes to rebuilding their community. There was a community meeting recently, and one of the key topics was how to ensure that Altadena doesn't lose its soul in the process. Keeney Davis, a local artist who's been in Altadena for over 40 years, put it perfectly. He wants to see the community retain its character, its neighborly atmosphere, its beautiful Black community.
It seems like that sentiment is shared by many residents. The desire to preserve the essence of what made Altadena special.
Exactly. It's about honoring the past while also building a future where everyone feels welcome and can afford to stay. And speaking of community, let's not forget the incredible spirit of resilience that we're seeing in the aftermath of this fire. People helping each other, sharing resources, and finding ways to stay connected, even when so much has been lost. We read about Christina Conte, who created this amazing urban homestead in our backyard. Native plants, a flock of chickens. She was even teaching kids about medicinal herbs and kombucha.
A true testament to the spirit of self-sufficiency and community that defines Altadena.
And even though she lost her home, her safe space, everything she had worked for, she was talking about the kindness of her neighbors, the way people were coming together to support each other.
Yeah, it speaks to the strength of the human spirit in times of adversity.
It really does. And it's a reminder that even in the face of such devastation, there's still beauty, there's still love, there's still hope. It's these stories of resilience that keep me going, that make me believe that Altadena can come back from this stronger than ever. And if you're feeling inspired by what you're hearing, please take a moment to hit that like button and share this video. Let's get this story out there. Let's show our support for Altadena and for all communities facing similar challenges.
Sharing these stories is so crucial to raising awareness and fostering empathy, for sure.
Absolutely. Because this isn't just about Altadena. It's about the bigger picture of how we rebuild after disasters, how we ensure that communities aren't erased, how we create a future where everyone has a place to call home. Now, as we head into the final part of this deep dive, we're going to shift our focus to the specific challenges and opportunities of rebuilding Altadena. We'll be looking at policy solutions, community initiatives, and what we can all do to support a just and equitable recovery. All right, so we've seen the devastation. We've heard the stories of resilience. We've talked about that very real fear of Altadena losing its unique character. But now let's get down to brass tacks. How do you actually rebuild a community after a disaster of this magnitude? Where do you even begin?
It's a daunting task. There's no doubt about that. And there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Yeah.
But we can certainly look at what's worked and what hasn't in other communities that have faced similar challenges.
Right, because we're not just talking about rebuilding houses. We're talking about rebuilding livelihoods.
Yeah.
And that sense of community that was so strong in Altadena.
Exactly. It requires a multifaceted approach, for sure. It starts with those immediate needs, shelter, food, medical care. But it also means thinking long-term about creating a sustainable and equitable future for Altadena.
We've talked about that fear of disaster gentrification and how that can completely reshape a community. So what are some concrete steps that can be taken to mitigate that risk?
Well, there are a number of policy tools that can be used to protect vulnerable communities in these situations. Things like affordable housing requirements for new developments, zoning regulations that prioritize community needs over profit, and community land trusts, which can help keep housing affordable in the long run.
Those all sound like promising approaches, but policy is only one part of the equation. What about the role of community organizations and grassroots efforts?
They're absolutely essential. They're the groups that are on the ground working directly with residents, understanding their needs and advocating for their interests. They play a vital role in ensuring that rebuilding efforts are truly community-driven and responsive to the people who are most impacted.
And that brings us back to the importance of community engagement. We can't just impose solutions from the top down. We need to listen to the voices of Altadena residents, understand their vision for the future, and work together to create a rebuilding process that is equitable, inclusive, and truly reflects the spirit of this community.
Absolutely. It's about empowering residents to be active participants in shaping their own future.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the aftermath of the Eaton Fire, I want to leave you with this conclusion. Altadena's story is far from over. It's a story of resilience, of community, of a determination to rebuild not just homes, but a way of life. And while the challenges are immense, there's also a sense of hope, a belief that something beautiful can emerge from the ashes. If this deep dive has resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it. And make sure to subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into stories that matter. We'll continue to follow Altadena's journey and we'll keep you updated on how you can help support their efforts to rebuild a brighter future.